Pucks with Haggs
is brought to you by Prize Picks and the Game Time app.
Welcome to another edition of the Pucks with Haggs podcast, powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network. I believe this is the 145th episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. I'm your host, Joe Haggerty. You can find my work at joehaggerty.substack.com. Subscribe and get yourself a premium membership. You can get all of my Bruins and NHL writing sent straight directly to your inbox. I also write columns 3 times a week for the Boston Sports Journal about the Boston Bruins, so check out bostonsportsjournal.com. Get a great subscription there where you get all of the Bruins, Celtics, Patriots, and Red Sox coverage, in addition to some other great stuff as well. Well worth the money. Some great writing and coverage of all 4 teams, so check that out as well. Let's first thank our sponsors here at Prize Picks. First of all, download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Let's also thank our friends at Game Time, the great ticketing service. Game Time app, create an account, use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right. Let's get into it here. Mailbag episode. Right now, we're coming off some decent Bruins performances. They've been pretty good defensively, very good defensively, good goaltending, low-scoring games, but right now, I think it's 10 goals in 5 games, I believe it is, that they've scored. Not scoring enough, not scoring quite enough offensively. They did have a nice outburst against the Islanders for 6 goals right before Thanksgiving, the holiday, but then they came back and again had trouble scoring. Tough game. The one against the Penguins Black Friday, they end up losing it 2-1. I thought that was a good game, really good game. And obviously the Penguins now we're seeing are red hot and playing really good hockey. They've kind of woken up and have started to rise a little bit in the standings and play a little bit more to their talent level. So I think that was definitely part of it. But I just think that was a good game where they just didn't get a good bounce in the third period. And they were right in it. And I think that's what they're going to be. This team is not going to blow people away offensively. Do I think they're the worst offensive team in the NHL like they've played for most of the first few months of the season? I don't think so. I think they're better than that, and they're starting to come out of it and score a few more goals and look a little bit better offensively, but they're certainly not like a top 5 NHL team where they're going to be cranking out power play goals and just overwhelming teams offensively and piling up all these big blowout scores. Like, we're not going to see that out of this Bruins team. The personnel just isn't there for that. I like the way that they're playing a little more now. It's more north-south. It's more simple hockey. It's dump and play in their end. It's use the big forwards that they have and the forecheck that they have and good defensive structure and pressure and good old-fashioned hockey that they're playing right now. And, they're getting more consistent defensively. They're getting more consistent playing wave after wave of forward attacks with the lines where everybody's consistent and it's just wave after wave from all 4 forward lines where they're playing in the other end. They're forechecking. They're playing with speed. You do see right now that the Bruins are trying to speed things up tempo-wise, the way that they're playing, and it's like had a rough effect on their passing. Their passing is off. You can see that guys are missing other guys with passes. Guys aren't getting to the spot fast enough they need to get to at times. You're definitely seeing at times guys are sort of running into each other and a little too crowded at points, kind of getting in each other's way when they're carrying the puck or going through the middle of the ice. And I think all that stuff is a byproduct now of like really trying to speed up the pace that they're playing at and pick it up, because before I think they were playing slow and they were thinking their way through the system they wanted to play with Jim Montgomery, where there was all this small passing and, interconnected play. And then we still see some of that, but I think we're seeing much more, playing with speed, getting in the right spots, getting the puck into their end, and then, creating havoc once you get in the offensive zone and playing in their end and really keeping it there. And attacking through the neutral zone, getting pucks back and reloading and going back into their end. We're seeing all that kinds of stuff. But I think the Bruins right now are trying to change that mid-season and midstream, and there's definitely some growing pains offensively too, and some things where they're just not as fluid as some of the other teams are now that have been in the same system or doing the same things for the first 2 months of the season. So I like what I'm seeing, though. Like the games that they're losing, they're in the games. They're in every game because of the way their defense and goaltending is playing right now. They're going to start getting more bounces, and if they get a few more power play goals, they're going to start winning more hockey games and scoring a few more goals. I think we're going to see that at points. You look at the score sheet right now, and like right before Jim Montgomery got fired, every single game, there was 6, 7, 8, sometimes 9 players on that team that did not have a shot on net. There were zeros up and down that line. So many passengers in these games. And you're not seeing that as much anymore. I've checked every single game since Sacco took over. And some of it is that they're funneling pucks now and they're shooting more pucks to the net. And there's definitely attention paid to volume over, quantity over quality. But you're seeing like maybe 2, max 3 guys that aren't getting shots on net. Everybody seems involved. Everybody's touching the puck. Everybody's firing shots. It just seems to be a much better way of going about things where everybody's interconnected and involved much more in what's happening. So I just think it's a better fit overall, what we've seen from Joe Sacco in a handful of games since he took over as the interim head coach versus what we saw with Jim Montgomery before. But we're recording this before the big centennial game against the Montreal Canadiens. That should be really fun, should be interesting. I mean, let's face it, should be a W for the Bruins. That's a team that they beat handily at the beginning of the year. I think they should do the same again. Hopefully it's got some of the old magic because it's the centennial between the Bruins and Canadiens, because the rivalry has been kind of a dud as of late. So hopefully it's a little bit better there. But we stand there now and still want to get more of a look at what the Bruins are long term and how much better they can be than what we saw in the first few months of the season. But the most important game, I think, in this entire beginning juncture of Joe Sacco taking over was the night before Thanksgiving on the island, when the Bruins needed a win. They needed to spark offensively after they were frustrated in a Monday night game against the Vancouver Canucks, where I thought they were the better team and they just couldn't score and got shut out. They exploded for 3 goals in the third period. They scored 6 goals overall. That win pushed them into the top 3 in the Atlantic Division at the U.S. Thanksgiving holiday, which is always an important marker. If you're going to be in the playoff picture and the structure at that point, usually you're going to be in the playoffs at the end of the year, and the Bruins were. They were actually in the top 3 in the Atlantic Division, not even a wild card, as they'd been for most of the first few months. So that was really encouraging. They fell out of the playoff picture altogether, leading into Sunday's centennial game against the Canadiens. So they're going to have to push their way back into that picture. But, they're right in the thick of things, and they have not played anywhere close to their best hockey of the season. So that's another encouraging sign when it comes to the Bruins. All right, we've got a mailbag episode here, so let's read some questions. Joe, I'm a season ticket holder for 46 years. I'm waiting for Fabian Lysell. Everyone else has come up. When is it his turn? And that's from Luigi on the Facebook fan page. Well, Luigi, I'm sure the Bruins appreciate that you've been a season ticket holder for 46 years. Man, that's a long time. You've seen a lot of awesome hockey over the last 46 years. That is 4. Well, I was 4 years old when you got your season ticket, so that's 1978. So you missed the Bobby Orr years for the most part, or pretty much altogether. Actually, altogether, I think you did. So you missed the Bobby Orr era, but you caught on at the very end. Lunch Pail AC, those were fun teams to watch. The 80s, obviously, what you saw, Oliver Bork. I mean, that's a pretty good time to jump on and to get season tickets. So good on you for doing that. And I wish my dad was a season ticket holder since 1978. I've gone to my share of Bruins games, especially since I started covering the team in 2003. But there's a lot of the 70s and 80s and 90s where I went to a game every year or every couple of years and didn't go to as many as I would have liked, as many as I go to now. So I'm jealous of all the hockey you've been able to see. But As far as Fabian Lysell goes, look, there's a reason he has not been called up from Providence. Okay, a bunch of the other players have been called up because they played good hockey, because they were deserving of the call up, because they did um, something to merit the call up. Mark McLaughlin got it because he was on a 5-game goal scoring streak and great penalty killer, good face-off guy, good bottom six forward, good detail player, does all the little things well. Like, he's done all the stuff to earn a call-up. Georgi Merkulov had been a playmaker, was producing offensively when he got called up. All these players that you're seeing get called up, the young sort of prospecty guys or the younger type players that are getting called up and getting looked at, it's because they've earned it. It's because they deserve it. Lysell has not to this point. Like, I think he's starting to play a little bit better, but he was not being effective at the beginning of the year. And from what I was told, he was kind of bad habits were creeping into his game. He wasn't the force that he can be when he's really feeling confident and feeling right about his game and firing on all cylinders. That was just not happening. I think he had 1 goal in the first handful to 10 games of the season. I'd have to look up exactly where they are for games played at this point in the AHL. But he was on 1 goal for a long time. And I don't, he hasn't been a real big producer. He was a minus player. I think he still might be. Just not good enough, and certainly not anything to merit a call up. And I will harken back to the, good isn't good enough speech from Brad Marchand at the end of training camp, when you asked, it's sort of, Merkulov and Lysell have had good camps, where do they stand kind of thing. And Marchand launched into a good is not good enough for this team sort of thing, where, like, it's not good enough. Like, and he wasn't even good. Lysell was not even good the first, month and a half, 2 months of the season in the AHL. And even if it was good is not good enough. You should be dominating at the American Hockey League level, taking over games, scoring a lot of points if you're a skill guy like Lysell with, the speed and the skill that he has, and really mastering that level to the point where you look like you're ready, and they will put you in a role where you can do that at the NHL level. Like, the Bruins would have liked nothing better than Fabian Lysell to be ready to play right wing and replace Jake DeBrusk going into this season. I think they would have loved that. I think that probably was the internal hope or plan, is that finally your first round pick from a few years ago was ready to take that next step and was ready to step in, which is the circle of life in the NHL, salary cap wise, where once you can't afford to keep the free agent anymore, you have to have somebody in your system that you can put into place that's on an entry-level contract and will be a cheaper option, and Lysell would be that. So I think they would have liked nothing better than Lysell to be a guy that they would have called up. He just hasn't earned it yet. He hasn't had it, the merit is not there. And I think the first thing you can do as an organization to lose respect from the players in that organization is if you start making decisions based on something that's not merit and something that's not deserved. Like, imagine how pissed all kinds of players in Providence are going to be if they start seeing guys get called up that they know are not playing the right way, are not doing the right things, are not doing the things that you are stressing are important organizationally, and they're not hitting all the notes that you want them to hit for their prospects. And you elevate him anyway, and you give him a promotion anyway that he probably doesn't deserve or hasn't earned. That's going to be discouraging, and that's going to create bad morale throughout your organization with all of your players if you start making decisions that way. So I just don't think Fabian Lysell's there, and maybe he will get there. He's still pretty young. You can't say he's like young for the AHL anymore. No, he should be a dominant player, an impact player at the AHL after having been there for a few years and being in his early 20s now. And he's still not really there and doing that yet. So he needs to get to that level before I'm going to start banging the drum for him to be up here. I know you want to get a look at him because you've heard good things, and he's got a cool name. His name's Fabian. Cool. And you would think he's got some skills that would electrify or excite people at the NHL level. But I can tell you, I've seen enough preseason games where I didn't even notice him, that you should not be clamoring for him to be called up until he's ready to go. Because if he does get called up before he's ready, you're not even going to notice any of his skill. You're not going to see it because he doesn't showcase it enough, consistently enough for him to be an impact guy and for him to be somebody that they can rely on to make plays. So he's just not there yet. So maybe that will happen soon, but we're not there yet. All right. Can they win 3 games in a row from BMF 0000 on Twitter? This is the rub. This is where the Bruins are at right now. Is we're starting to see it for a few games at a time. We're starting to see them look okay. I think they will win 3 in a row because of the way they're playing defensively now has got them in every single game. The goaltending is much, much better. Jeremy Swayman has looked much better since the move with Jim Montgomery. So I do think you're going to start to see a little movement there, and you're going to start to see things start to come along from a consistency perspective where they could string a few wins in a row. And really the goaltending is a big factor in it, and the consistent defense. Once you start getting those, you can start beating the teams you're supposed to beat, and you'll get some bounces and beat some teams that maybe it's a 50-50 thing. And you don't necessarily deserve to win, but you don't deserve to lose either. And I think we're headed there. They just did not play that way in the first 2 months of the season, where they were not good enough defensively, and the goaltending was getting shell-shocked by the bad defense, to the point that they weren't in enough games. They just weren't competitive in some games, and they were never going to win them, or never going to get a 50-50 shot at potentially winning the game. So they weren't going to get into that winning streak thing. Once they get the goaltending and the defense settled down and stabilized, then you can start to think about winning streaks or playing good enough to string some games together. And I do think we're going to see a 3-game winning streak from the Boston Bruins sooner rather than later. But I understand the frustration. It's been a tough first few months. I've heard more boos at the end of periods in the last few weeks than I had heard in a while. So there's definitely unrest with the fans, and fans aren't happy about the money they're spending on tickets and not seeing a good enough product on the ice, not seeing an exciting enough product on the ice, all of that stuff. I totally get it. And I agree with it. I think, I understand the frustration. I understand why fans are feeling that way right now. So, especially on home ice, they're not scoring enough goals on home ice. What is it, 4 or 5 goals in 4 games on home ice over the last couple of weeks? That, going back to all the playoff games that they've lost on home ice over the last few years, and now they're not able to show up offensively and score on home ice right now. I get why there's a lot of clamoring and fans that are aggravated. My family went to that Vancouver game. And that was a frustrating game because they didn't even see a goal scored. It was they didn't. Half of the fun of going to a Bruins game, if you're a fan, is hearing the Zombie Nation song and celebrating after a goal and seeing the explosion of emotion and energy that happens in that place when the Bruins score. And they didn't even get to see it once against Vancouver. Tons of chances, tons of shots on net, tons of offensive zone time, tons of potential scoring chances, but couldn't bury anything, couldn't follow through. And I think the Bruins were frustrated after that too, because they knew they could have and should have won that game and had the chances to score all over the place and just didn't finish. And that translated into the outburst the next night against the Islanders. But you can't do that on home ice too much. There's too many games where I think it's too frustrating for the fans to watch right now on home ice, and they need to find a way to turn up the dial offensively and score more at home. To kind of make the fans, send them home happy a little bit and give them something to watch, something to talk about, something to cheer about, so they're not quite as aggravated at the end of these periods or when the game is over. And I think that's going to have to be a focus for this team over the rest of the season, is doing better at home consistently during the regular season and the playoffs, because I think they just have to. That's something they have to figure out and get done. All right, let's take a break from the mailbag right now to talk about Prize Picks. It's the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America and the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Instead of battling thousands of other players that could be pros or sharks, you simply pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll right in. It's fun, and it is super duper simple. Prize Picks is the best way to win real money this hockey season. Which players are going off, which ones aren't. Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinion into real money all season long on Prize Picks. Prize Picks even now offers Venmo for quick and easy deposits and withdrawals into your account this sports season. What is easier or better than that? This week on Prize Picks, I'm looking at the hockey board and selecting Alex Lafreniere, more than 2.5 shots per game. Sidney Crosby for more than 19.75 time on ice. And you can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to big payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, Prize Picks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. It's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. All right, let's get back into the podcasting action, answering your questions in this mailbag episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. This one is from Steve Kimball 77. Mason Lohrei is very weak defensively, very soft, and he shies away from contact. He will not get any better defensively. He is a liability in the D zone. All right. He is a young, skilled offensive defenseman. Okay. He's never going to be a killer in the defensive zone. I think this is obvious. I think this is something that is clear. He's not a Brandon Carlo. He's not a Zadorov. He's not somebody that's going to bury people in front of the net, bury guys in the corner. But there are times I think when you put him out there with other people and it's just not going to work. He was out there, and I think it was with Andrew Peak the other day. And they were tough in the defensive zone together, just not enough, not good enough, the two of them together. And they ended up it was against Pittsburgh, and they ended up getting overpowered for a goal because one of the Penguins players just decided he was going to disrupt and cause chaos around the front of the net, and he distracted both of them. It got to the point where Peak was like chasing the guy across the ice and opened up the slot for somebody else, Tomasino, to come in and score. So, I think it was Drew O'Connor. I think that was the name of the guy for the Penguins. He was doing a lot of disrupting and a lot of distracting, and he was effective. So I think Lohrei, the whole key for me is that he's competitive in the D zone, that he's working hard, that he's fighting, that he's at least giving resistance, and that he's trying. And I've seen him do that. Like, sometimes it's not going to be good enough. Sometimes he's going to get overpowered physically. Sometimes he's going to get tossed around a little bit. I think that will happen less and less the older he gets and the stronger and smarter he gets, because he's a big kid. He's 6'4", 6'5", and he's a good-sized kid. Like, I don't think he's going to get manhandled by people physically. And I haven't seen him I haven't seen him shy away, I would say, to times when he's got to go get the puck in the corner, retrieve it. He's got to do the things he has to do. I haven't seen a lot of that. Like, I thought he struggled, to be honest with you, the first 2 months of the season. I thought he struggled offensively. I thought he struggled with his strong suits, carrying the puck, making plays, making smart decisions with the puck. Making confident plays with the puck, like doing things that showed that, like, he was really feeling good about his game and good about himself. I didn't see enough of that in the first 2 months. Like, I can overlook some of the defensive shortcomings, especially if you're going to have to pair him with somebody that's a good stay-at-home defenseman in order for him to be effective. And he's played a lot with Charlie McAvoy, and because McAvoy riffs and has worked well off Grzelcyk in the past, who's kind of a puck moving more skill guy that isn't the greatest defensive defenseman in the world. I think it makes sense in a lot of ways to put Lohrei with McAvoy, and they can be a really effective top pair, moving the puck, creating offense, like complementing each other really well. And Charlie will have to be more of the traditional, like, stay-at-home guy that blocks shots, that, like, throws his weight around in front of the net and plays the heavy role a little bit more. But I think that's to his strong suit. He is not a slick Erik Karlsson type, like, pure offensive defenseman, McAvoy. He's more of a Drew Doughty, like, plays both ends. When he's at his best, he's frustrating you because he's doing the job defensively, and he's really pissing you off because he's hitting you and he's playing physical, and he's intimidating you too, because he'll throw, like, that huge hit at the right time of the game where it's a momentum changer. But then he's also able to surprise you with some things that he can do offensively, and he's got some skill to create, and he gets a little time and space and can drive the net. He can make things happen. And in that way, he's a lot like Doughty. Like, he's a traditional, like, just good defenseman that will put up pretty good offensive numbers, but is not, going to ever be considered the best offensive defenseman of his generation or anything like that. So, I think Lohrei paired with McAvoy actually does a little bit of that, and it allows McAvoy to protect Lohrei a little bit. And I think that's what you should be doing with your young players and your best players. Is your best players should be able to protect your young players and bring out the best in them while covering for some of their shortcomings or the things they don't do quite as well. And I think that's the point of where we're at with Lowry and McAvoy. But I think Lowry's offensive potential, and he's going to get better as he gets more confident, as he makes more plays, as he gets a little more assertive with what he can do with the puck and just holding on to it and doing things. But you see him make plays walking the blue line and making plays when he has a little time and space and he can create. You see him making plays that nobody else in that back end can make. Like, he has it. It's just a matter of putting it all together and being able to finish off some of these plays, whether it's shooting the puck and scoring, whether it's passing, whether it's, creating things. Like, he's right there. And I think you just need to let him play, and he's going to turn into an incredibly effective, impactful finished product when he's done developing. It's just, I think we underestimate sometimes how difficult it is to play defenseman at the NHL level, how tough it is for those guys to figure out when to stay, when to go, when to take a risk, when not, how to manage the game, how to do all that while guys are trying to take your head off in the corner when you're retrieving pucks and are trying to red light you when you're skating up the ice if you're not like watching them. You don't have the awareness to know who's on the ice with you and who's going to look to, come hunting for you when you have the puck. To do all those things is incredibly difficult. And to to not feel like the veteran established scorers are not going to get pissed at you because you're not passing them the puck and feeding them the puck in certain situations, and making sure you're doing what the right play is and you're helping your game, but also like being a good teammate and making sure like you're doing the right thing for those guys that are established and want the puck. Like, none of that is easy. That is a hard job. And I think Lowry has been good at it. And I don't think he's been a terrible liability in the D zone. I don't think he's going to be a hard-nosed shutdown defenseman, but I think he's been fine. And I think you live with that to get the offensive upside to eventually get him to the point where he's a top power play unit quarterback guy that can create a ton of offense, I think, from that kind of spot on the power play. I just think we're seeing the progression here. And I think these are the kind of players you should be patient with. These are talented young players that are going to turn into really good players. You just need to give them a little bit of rope and need to allow them a little freedom to create without them getting paranoid that like they're going to get yanked or they're going to get scratched. Like, let's be honest. Okay. Lowry getting scratched the second game of the season after the bad loss in Florida by Jim Montgomery, I don't think that was a good move. I think Jim Montgomery did not do Mason Lowry any favors, and I think his confidence was dented because of that scratch right after the first game of the season and how badly they lost. And I think that's something you can't do. I think that's a mismanagement of young players. That's, I think, one of the things that kind of lost some of the players. And I think there were moves like that along the way where Jim Montgomery was making decisions based on worrying about his job security instead of what was best for the team and what was right for the team. And I think it manifested in moves like that. It manifested in, going at Marchand on the bench. It manifested in benching Pasternak in the third period of a game, all that stuff. And that's why he's in St. Louis now and he's no longer in Boston. And he's doing fairly well there, just like Joe Sacco's, I think, doing really well in Boston. But I would challenge you to look at the first 20 games of the year under Montgomery and then look at the last, I think it's 5 since they've played since making the move. Challenge you to find any ways that they were better in the first 20 games than they are now. The Bruins are a far better hockey team in the last handful of games under Joe Sacco than they were in the first 20 under Jim Montgomery. And I think that's the big deal. That's what we should be looking at. That is the important part. And I think we've seen it. Sacco has been the right guy for this team. Maybe they're going to look for a full head coach in the offseason, depending on how things go this year. Maybe this will be a short-term thing for Sacco. I would love to see what he can do the rest of this year. And if he does a good job, give him the job, because I forgot how good of a coach, effective he was when he was in Colorado. And he's another guy like Mike Sullivan, like Bruce Cassidy, who has had over 10 years between NHL jobs. So now having this head coaching job now, it allows him to use everything that he's learned in his entire experience of being a coach to be effective and to better the things he did the first time around. And I think that's a fantastic mold to get a highly successful NHL coach, is give a guy a job when he's 39, let him learn some of the hard lessons. Yes, he'll get fired. then let him be an assistant for a decade, really learn a lot of those lessons, or be in the AHL, one or the other, and then give him another NHL job and see how much he's learned and how much more effective he can be. And I think we're starting to see that right now, and it's a great thing. All right. This from Shore 477. Zero identity. If they're going to play lunch pail, grind it out, rely on defensive hockey and goaltending, could they at least hit and fight? Entertain me, please. Shore 477. I mean, I look, this is the one area where I think it's problematic for the Bruins right now, and I think it's something they have to worry about, and it's something they have to fix, okay? Is they're kind of boring. Like, it's effective hockey, what they're doing. They're playing good defensive hockey, good structure, good goaltending. They're relying on a forecheck. They're trying to have more of a pressure forecheck like they talked about wanting to do at the beginning of the year. But the problem becomes they are not scoring a lot of goals. They are not good on the special teams right now, especially good. They're getting better at the penalty kill, but the power play is still up and down. And they're not playing physical enough, certain guys. Like Marcus Stelic, I think, has been very physical, and I liked the spark that he's given. Trent Frederick, not physical enough, not doing enough. Like, he's done a few things here and there, but like for a guy that's in a contract year that's not really doing much offensively, like he's got to find a way to factor into these games. He threw a big hit in that last game against Pittsburgh that I liked. He like clocked somebody and knocked them on their butt. Right after they released the puck. It was like hitting them right as they got rid of the puck. It was a good hard hit. Like you need to see more of that out of Trent Frederick. You absolutely need to see him do things to impact the game if he's not scoring, if he's not making plays that he hasn't been able to do. So like I will agree with Shore 477 that you got to start throwing the body around. You got to start hitting people. You got to start playing with energy. You got to start dropping the gloves. You got to start making it exciting. If you're going to win every game 2-1, 1-0, 3-2, and you're not going to score a lot and it's not going to be all that exciting, you got to do something else to entertain the fans. This is an entertainment business, the NHL. It's not just about the sport. It's about entertainment too. And the Bruins need to bring some of that entertainment back if they don't want to start losing, creating a malaise with the fan base where they're not buying as many tickets, where we're starting to see empty seats, where, the ratings start to get affected, like all that stuff. The Bruins need to play exciting hockey and entertaining hockey in front of the fans. And I think the physical part of it is a place they can do that. And it's not as difficult to scoring goals and trying to score 5-6 goals a game. You can entertain the fans by playing good hard hockey and dropping the gloves every once in a while. I think that's something the Bruins need to listen to the fans a little bit more and play a little bit more exciting brand of hockey than they're necessarily playing right now. All right, let's give a little love as we take another pause in the podcast to Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time for obviously your Bruin tickets, but also if you're looking for tickets to the Patriots, Celtics, or even comedy or concert tickets as well. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Priority is a great thing. Game Time Picks curation makes it easier to save more on sports, comedy, concert, theater, etc. They have all-in pricing, which I love. Toggling this feature shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Seat views, you get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. What is better than 110% of the difference? They have all this stuff going on at Game Time right now. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, of course, but download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right. One more question here. A better way to celebrate the centennial. This is from Bob, by the way. A better way to celebrate the centennial would be to fire Cam Neely and Don Sweeney after putting the axe to a good guy in Jim Montgomery. Jacobs should be embarrassed for putting such a mediocre product on the ice as he rakes in millions from gullible and loyal Bruins fans. All right, look, they did not play well the first 2 months of the season, but they pretty much sucked under good guy Jim Montgomery. They've played better under Joe Sacco. They've won more than they've lost. They've been in a playoff spot. They've actually looked like they were putting forth the proper effort to win NHL games, which they were not doing under good guy Jim Montgomery. If you actually know hockey, how can you look at the first 20 games and say, wow, that's a Bruins team that's really busting it and giving everything that they have to try to win for the fans? How can you do that? Why couldn't good guy Jim Montgomery get a better effort out of them? And then all of a sudden they fire good guy Jim Montgomery, they bring in Joe Sacco, and everybody's skating, everybody's back checking, everybody's doing the right things. Like the goaltending was way better. The special teams have been better. Like all the players seem much more invested and much more connected and engaged in every single game. How is that? On some level, that is the management's fault, because they put a coach in place that wasn't able to do what he had to do to get the best performance out of the Bruins those first 20 games of the year. So that's on them. But the way the team performed on the ice, this is a similar roster and a better roster than last year when they, had a great run in the Atlantic Division, won a playoff series, and lost to the Stanley Cup champs. This is not that different a team. This is similar to the team that they built before. This is not about roster buildup. Look, they need another winger. They need a little more offense. They need another guy that can score goals. That is definitely the case. They're last in the NHL in scoring. They're last, I think, in the power play, or second to last. They're certainly down on the list. So scoring is an issue for them right now. But they also weren't playing defense, weren't stopping pucks, weren't doing anything before under good guy Jim Montgomery. So that's on the coach and the players. That is on them for not playing as well as they can, as much as it's on, or more than it's on, Cam Neely and Don Sweeney, who have been together putting up teams that have won regular season games at a huge clip. They've been a perennial power in the league for the last 10 years. They've been one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. For God's sake, they played like crap the first 20 games of this year, and they were still in a playoff spot, okay? This is a talented roster. This is a good roster. This has star players. They have solid NHL players. They have ways to win when they play to their strengths. This is not about team building. And everybody wants to jump on that bandwagon. People that think they know and talk like they know hockey and have you convinced that they know what they're talking about will crap all over the roster management on this team. But the roster is fine. The roster is a playoff roster in the NHL level. It is. They need to add a winger at the trade deadline, and they will. This has been in the plan all along. They did not properly replace Jake DeBrusk when he left in free agency. And as we referenced before, Fabian Lysell would have been the in-house candidate to replace him, and he's just not there. So they need to probably go outside the organization and get somebody, and they will. Don Sweeney has a long tradition of going out and addressing needs at the trade deadline, and I think they will do that again with this position and this need. So, I don't want to hear about ownership of the Bruins when they spend to the cap every year. I don't want to hear about management when they put a decent roster on the ice, a playoff roster on the ice every single year. They are putting quality players out there. They are paying their star players to keep them. I think they overspent, I think, frankly, on Jeremy Swayman, because all the fans out there were crybabying that they had to pay Swayman $8 million a year when he didn't earn it and he hadn't deserved it. So that's on the fans. That's on the soft crybaby fans. That's not on Bruins management, okay? And that's what happens when Bruins management listens to the fans too much. And certainly when the player listens to fans too much, or people that think they know hockey but don't really know it, when everybody just immediately says, oh, let's pay the guy that hasn't played more than 40 games a year. Let's pay him $8 million a year to be the starting goalie and the number one goalie when he's never done it before. And what happens? He holds out in training camp and he can't handle the pressure of being the number one guy to start the year after being a 26-year-old goalie that held out in training camp, and he struggles. That is exactly what was going to happen because he's never done this before, and he hadn't proven that he could do it, and you paid him before he could prove that he could do it because of some of the fans that don't know what they're talking about had pressured management into doing it. So let's hold the phone here on killing Bruins management, and saying everybody should be fired when this was, frankly, I think, a very clear example of a coach, good guy or not, that couldn't get enough out of this team the first 20 games of the year. And now all of a sudden they're performing under a different coach and a different voice. So that's on the players. That's on the coach. It's on management for putting all of it in place. But I think they have a secondary thing behind the players who deserve a brunt of the blame. and certainly the coach who couldn't get it out of them anymore and started doing panic things, I think, to try to get something out of them and being something he wasn't, and it ended up landing him in the unemployment line. Now he got in a job immediately in St. Louis, 5-year contract. Let's see how he does down there, but it wasn't working in Boston. I think that's pretty obvious now. All right. Thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in. Let's thank our sponsors again real quick. Download the Prize Picks app today and use the code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game. Let's also thank our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply, but again, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening to this mailbag episode of the Pucks with Haggs podcast. Well, now that we're out of the holiday weekend next week, we'll have 2 regular podcasts with guests. We'll talk some Bruins. We'll talk everything. But for now, we're going to sign off and say thanks for listening. See you at the rink.